Hydrology through collaborative data and model sharing.
From the DJ, check, is that right? So thank you everybody, it's a delight to be here. This is a little bit different from a lot of the genomics and life sciences work that we've seen. It's getting into something that's really close to all of your hearts, water. I trust you've all probably drunk water this morning. So HydroShare is a project supported by the National Science Foundation. It's really a collaborative environment being developed for sharing hydrologic data and models. There's 10 institutions involved. I'm at Utah State University. RENC is providing the core iRODS support and heavy lifting, and you can see many of the names of the people involved. There's a number of them in the room here, so why doesn't the HydroShare team stand up? So we didn't make cool black t-shirts with the logo on it, but these are the guys that are doing all the work, and if you have any questions, you can ask them. So our motivation is hydrologic research, where really advancing our understanding of the water cycle requires integration of information from multiple sources. You have rain gauges, you have stream flow, you have satellite sensors, you have measurements of soil moisture. You have models that have to try and integrate all of that information so they become data and computationally intensive. Can't all be done by one person, so that requires teamwork, that therefore requires collaboration, requires sharing of data in a collaborative way. I often say that the days of a single researcher going out and measuring a single stream flow and then writing a research paper about it are over, because it's nobody's interested in just that one set of measurements, but it's by bringing information from multiple sources together that we advance our understanding. This is also a grand challenge, as noted by the National Research Council, better hydrologic forecasting that quantifies the effects and consequences of land surface change on hydrologic processes and conditions. In short, we're dealing with either too much water or too little water, floods or droughts. And you can see some people resort to praying for rain, and then they pray that they didn't get so much when they are on the situation on the left. This slide just illustrates the sort of data-intensive nature of the models. This is the Rhesus model, which is supported by Larry Band's group here at the Institute for the Environment at UNC, and it involves a number of hierarchical scales. They go down to individual grid cells on a digital elevation model, and then sort of patches and out to watersheds, and try and integrate together the rainfall processes, the meteorological processes of that involve things like humidity, temperature, that drive what's going on in the hydrologic cycle. In short, where does water go when it rains? How much of it enters the river versus infiltrates, and so on. And then the vegetation and canopy processes involved. So that modeling can become quite challenging. So the goal with this project is really to provide a cyber infrastructure platform for hydrologic research to solve problems of a size and scope that you may not be able to do on a desktop computer. So we can see just as well as anybody else where information technology is going, software as a service, the sort of sweet spot of getting computation next to data that we heard about in the previous speaker is something we're also targeting. Data as a service, models as a service, and then visualization analysis services, all targeted at trying to get a better handle on the hydrology and really to address the community's needs. So this work is done and motivated through the Consortium of Universities for the Advancement of Hydrologic Science Incorporated. That's what CUHASI stands for. And it's about 120, 125 or so universities, mostly in the US, but quite a few around the world too, that have got together and are looking to establish infrastructure which includes computational infrastructure for the community to work on the big problems in hydrology. So this is HydroShare in a nutshell, and I'm going to give a demo of it later. It's a collaborative environment, so think of it as YouTube for hydrologists to be able to share hydrologic data and models. So you may have data or data set that you want to share with a colleague. You need to manage who has access to it, because researchers are notoriously private about their data before they've published the paper. But after they've published the paper, there's an obligation to then make it public. But then it's too late, because you've forgotten the procedures that you used, and you don't have the incentives to sort of keep track of and write proper metadata. So you want to be able to gather the metadata while the data is being worked on, and then when it gets made public, it's there. So there's managing access, sharing, visualizing, and manipulating the types of data that we have to deal with. Web services and APIs are involved. We want to be able to take advantage of high-performance computing, but often the researchers aren't necessarily versed well in the sort of jargon and complexity of high-performance computing, so we want to make it simple to use. And then eventually the data needs to get published for reproducible science with a digital object identifier. At a simplest level, the picture on the right there shows how the system is put together. We are thinking of iRODS as the network file system, so that stores our resource files, and we're using the word resource to represent either the data or the models that we deal with. It's finer grained than the concept of resource in iRODS that refers to a much larger grouping of files. iRODS has user accounts, and iRODS will do the authentication and authorization involved. We have a Django website that essentially provides the front end, I guess. If the DFC system that we saw demonstrated today had been available 2 or 3 years ago, we probably would have just used it. And then we've got this concept of web apps, again, having computation on the web that can use APIs to interact with the data. The paradigm of YouTube is actually not a bad thing to think about. It used to be that when I would take videos of my children when they were growing up and I wanted to send them to my parents in South Africa, it was a royal pain. I'd have to email them a VHS tape, or if I could put it on an FTP site, that was fine. I was computer savvy. I was at a university. I could get an FTP site. There was no way my mother could download it. They were behind a slow modem, and it was hopeless. So that's the sort of case of, and then even if they could, they'd have to figure out the format of it. And that was hopeless too. Along comes YouTube, and it'll just take almost all the formats that any camcorder will take. You put it in there. You don't have to worry about what it's doing, and my mother can just click, and it works. I think that a lot of data sharing is still in the older way. I'm still seeing people pass around memory sticks to share data, but you exceed the size limits of that, and I think there's opportunities to make data sharing easy. So this is one of the use cases that drives us. think of starting on the left, number one, you've got instruments observing data. They will then get streamed into a database, so it gets stored, step number two. Then if you've got some sort of a catalog environment, you can discover the data and then maybe retrieve it back to your desktop and start doing analysis. I worked on the precursor to this project, which was the Kwahazi Hydrologic Information System, and that effectively achieved steps 1 through 3. That's effectively getting the initial observed data in an accessible form. But now you start doing your analysis. You need to push it back somewhere so that your colleagues can look at it. You need to do collaborative analysis, so there's the 3 people working together, all using their desktop computers to access the data in the cloud and discuss it, do the sort of work of research. At the end, they are likely to write a paper. I guess papers are the coin of the realm in academia. It's publish or perish. And then submit that paper for publication. Nowadays, because of needs for reproducibility, there's the push for the data to go along with it. So the data should be available to the reviewers. Eventually, when the paper gets published, the data should be published too, so that it's all open. It gets given a digital object identifier. So at its heart, HydroShare is really a system for sharing resources and collaborating. Resources are files or sets of files structured to represent a hydrologic process model or element in the environment. We're trying to use standard representations for the data as much as possible to enhance interoperability and focus on hydro value added. We're a fairly small project in the grand scheme of things, so we have to basically recognize where the information technology world is doing its work for us. We don't need to go there, but where we have to focus on the specific needs of the hydrology community, we should work on that. We want tools that can act on resources to visualize, modify, and create new resources. Those are the sort of tools next to the data that start doing some of the computation with the data. And we need access control and sharing. There'll be a lot more about the access control and sharing. Of course, Alva Couch is speaking next, and he'll be talking about how he's sort of tweaking or advancing or modifying the iRODS ways of doing that. When we talk about resources, this is what I have in mind. We've got just generic files, that's the generic resource, then things like geographic rasters, representation of elevations on a grid, time series, multidimensional space-time data that may represent, for example, precipitation in 2 dimensions and then through time. The things that are in black are what we've actually got fairly well developed in the system, so I'm sort of calling them checked off, although there's still additional functionality to be added. The things that are in green we've actually got in our system that's currently deployed, but it's a little bit shaky. There's work still to be done, and then the things in blue are things that we haven't actually started working on yet. I guess the point of this is that we're in the progress of sort of fleshing out the specifications for the way we're going to represent structured data. In terms of models, there's been a lot of thinking about, you've got a model program that actually executes to perform a certain computation. You've got its input files. Together they can comprise a model instance that you then might submit for execution, and then when you've added the output files to that, you've got a sort of complete model package. Once you've got all of that well defined and in the system, it's not a great leap to submit it to a computational resource and generate the results on HPC environments. So that's where we're going. So let me just give you a little bit of a demo. And I forgot my piece of paper, so I'll have to go by memory, which is going to be all I'm going to have difficulty with is my passwords. So here's HydroShare. The first thing you want to do is sign in. Anybody can get a anybody can get an account, and Pavitra is going to help me out here. I can now look at the various resources in the system. You notice there's a lot that say NFIE, California region, Colorado region, so on, loaded by one particular person. And that's because this system is being used by a summer institute that's part of the National Flood Interoperability Experiment that's going on at the National Water Center in Tuscaloosa right now for the students participating in that to collaborate around data. I'm just going to click into what's owned by me. Actually, I should have not. Let me just go back here. Let me rather search on volume, and I happen to have, so there's the sort of searching, keyword-based searching capability that I've now found this resource I created about Great Salt Lake level and volume, and I can see we've got multiple authors. I'm the owner of this resource, which means I've got control over it. There's an abstract, there's keywords. We're providing information on how this data should be cited, and each is getting given a unique identifier in terms of a GUID. One can either make a resource public or private. This one happens to be private, and I could switch it to public. So for those of you who are surfing around on HydroShare right now, you could access this data, but if I do that, you can't. But there's other data that you can access, and this is not particularly secret. I just wanted to show you how it works. I can manage who has permission to work on it, and there's individual files involved, and I can add files. I can even add files from iRODS. What I'm actually going to do next is create a new resource, and I'm going to actually load a geographic raster. So that's a digital elevation model. I'm going to, this one I'm going to call it Cub DEM, because that's for the Cub River area. I'm going to sign into iRODS and detob my password. Now, Nirav doesn't know this. Well, he knows that I've got an account on iPlant. I'm actually going to sign into the iPlant instance of iRODS, and this is where I needed to. Okay, my computer's remembering. data.iplant.collaborative.org is the host, and the zone is just iPlant. So HydroShare, by virtue of having this browsing into any instance of iRODS, and the iPlant iRODS instance, by virtue of sort of being accessible to anybody with an account, just enables this. Now I can browse my files, so it's iPlant home, my files, and I have loaded a file that's the Cub River digital elevation model. I will select that, and it's a Geotofile, which means it's a representation of digital elevation data, and I'll click create resource. So now it's actually making a copy of that from the iPlant version of iRODS to the Renzi version of iRODS that's holding this data. While it's doing that, it's actually examining the properties of this Geotofile to automatically populate whatever metadata it can. So one of the things we really want to try and do is make it easy for the research scientists to add metadata. So now this exists. It's telling me that I still actually need to add an abstract and keywords before I can make this public. I can go down here, and if I click on coverage, you'll see it's already got the bounding box information that because it knows where this geographic data set is in space. So that's metadata that the user doesn't have to worry about. Now, this particular geographic coordinate information was not part of the file. What's actually in the file is the information that it's in the North American Datum 1927 UTM projection. That's information that's familiar to GIS people, but we've got the GDAL library being used, so we read this information from the file and we convert our common generic coverage information all to the standard WGS 1984 projection so that it can all get mapped together. Notice also that there's information about how many rows and columns there are in this data set, what the cell size is, what the no data value is. GeoTIFF information doesn't give information about what's in the file. So it just sort of says band and unnamed. So we could then go and edit and say this is actually elevation and perhaps give its units in meters. So that's something that's a little bit of a shortcoming of the sort of classical GeoTIFF file format, and we're adding that metadata to provide it, to let it be more complete. Let me show you a little bit about how the data can be edited. So let me say digital elevation model for the Cub River, and should tell it not to worry about passwords here. And let me also add a keyword, because one of the things that we've said is that you can't actually make a resource public until you've provided an abstract and keyword. So we're sort of providing a little bit of incentives for people to actually fill out metadata. So now I can actually go back to the base landing page, and if I tell it to be public, it's there. So now everybody else could get access to this. Let me show you what happens when I download it. So I'm going to download all of the contents, and it says it's a zipped Bagot archive. This is a Library of Congress format that we're using, and it's also compatible with Data 1 to have proper metadata and provenance associated with the data. So I clicked on that download. So if I go to my desktop, I've now got the zip file that was just downloaded at 1 p.m. according to my computer, which is in Mountain Time. If I take the zip file, if I take the bag out of that and look in the folder and look inside the data, there's these various metadata files, and let me just open one of them and say an Internet Explorer. This is the way that we're sort of bundling our metadata. So it's got all of these specific identifiers for what the resource is. There's the abstract. There was the title. This is the name of the creator in the sort of Dublin Core metadata form. Again, that assumed all of that information from my profile, so I didn't have to write it, but I could have added a user onto that. It's got the Dublin Core bounding box metadata information and all sorts of other wonderful stuff that probably some of you, not everybody wants to know about. But it's there. So we're trying to be fairly rigorous about the metadata we keep, but not bothering the scientist with that, because scientists don't want to get bothered with that sort of thing. I think that's it for the demo. This is a bit more details on the architecture. So we're essentially working hard. You can think of it as a blending of us building something fresh, us reusing information from what iRODS provides for us, and then us providing a place for other people to plug in. So here, most of our work on this has been in this Django web application, where we've been putting together the website, providing the interface to loading the files, downloading the files, editing the metadata. Underneath with iRODS, we've done very little except just use it. Alva's going to be writing some rules and some policies to change the change the access control that we'll hear about. But beyond that, we're using iRODS sort of out of the box. And then over on the right here is where we're providing opportunity for expansion and collaboration, where there's effectively you can think of this as the platform, and now you can provide the computation and visualization. So we've got this concept of apps.hydroshare.org, where that will be a whole set of tools that might provide visualization for geographic raster data, visualization for time series, modeling, editing, and so on. And there's an opportunity for those to be built either within our Django system, perhaps in a Docker environment, or on a completely separate server, maybe even a completely different operating system. It's not unthinkable to maybe have a Windows server interacting with our system, which is Linux-based, just using the APIs. The summary: it's really a new web-based system for advancing model and data sharing. Provides access to multiple types of hydrologic data using standards so that we can have interoperability. Flexible discovery functionality, so I didn't talk much about that. But once we've got everything here in iRODS, we want to be able to take advantage of some of the elastic search via microservices. Model sharing and execution, and then, well, execution of a model, setting it to a high-performance computer without the researcher really having to worry about how to configure that. And then the social media collaboration functionality. I didn't note that, but if I go back here, one of the things I can do is write a comment. Now, it's a little bit meaningless for me to write a comment on my own resource, but what if you could have written a comment on this, and I can say this is an interesting piece of data, something, it's at least spell it right. And if somebody likes what I said, there's an opportunity to put a sort of +1, and maybe somebody else will go there and put another +1, and it'll show. So once that is added, you can, well, the whole notion of comments, adding value to it, supporting the discovery, the +1ing is one way for crowdsourcing effectively the usability and the usefulness and the quality control. So if there's something really wrong with the data set, we would hope that somebody would write a comment explaining why that's wrong, and maybe a whole bunch of other people would +1 that negative comment, and then you know that this is a piece of data to avoid. We've purposely gone away from sort of having a -1 to downrate things, but if you want to criticize something, you have to explain why in a comment, and then hopefully get lots of +1s on that. And then links to other data modeling systems through the interface, and we saw that I was already interacting with iPlant. And that's some of the team that has helped us with this, and you'll see that some of the people who are now working full-time on iRODS actually started out working on this. This was our first sort of get-going meeting. Thank you.